ring the bell this time. Okay. Okay. A couple deep breaths. Namaste. Hello, and welcome to a discussion about consciousness with me, Eric Drake, and my lovely partner, Christine Theberge, or Crystal Grace, as she's also known. So it's just going to be informal discussion, and we're just going to get into it. Since the conversation has so many various avenues from which to approach it, I generally call it the Galactic conversation, because it is a conversation about the expansion of awareness of the human collective on the planet. That really means moving from a planetary awareness, which is now in full swing through the internet and the movement of information around the planet, to a perspective which includes the whole galaxy and beyond, and really means what, I guess the implication is, what needs to happen on the planet with the human collective in order for us to assume a place at the table on the galactic scale. So that means basically meeting the neighbors. It's time to meet the neighbors, and there's lots of them. The consciousness, purpose of consciousness is to create more of itself, and that's what the universe is, and everything in it is made of consciousness in order so consciousness can experience itself in physical form, in a three-dimensional physical form. It's a very limited state for consciousness, because consciousness has potentially an infinite number of physical dimensions. But I think for our purposes, it's really just understanding the main thing that we should be concerned with is understanding the nature of 3D existence, and perhaps its relationship to a fourth spatial dimension, which is more of talk about physics, and that is a conversation that I would approach by explaining the work of one of my teachers, Nassim Haramein, and the new paradigm, or the returning paradigm in physics, which includes consciousness and actually is the physics of what is it? Right now we have a materialistic paradigm that basically says everything is mechanistic and is just clockwork, and so the primal thing is actually the matter-energy relationship. This is actually a return to the broader understanding that the prime relationship is actually to consciousness itself, and consciousness manifesting itself as information systems. But actually, we were going to try to have this as a dialogue. So do you want to start with the question?
Well, it occurred to me, you just said consciousness manifesting as information systems. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay. So, what we experience as solid three-dimensional reality is now, and has been for some time since the advent of quantum physics, and basically our exploration of anything that is on the micro scale, on smaller than what we can see, basically, which would be this on the scale of cells and molecules, atoms, and the precursors of atoms, the subatomic particles, and their precursors, which are the quarks. And then there's one more level below that, which we've identified, or kind of identified. It's not really codified yet in the standard model of physics, but it's the subquark level. And basically, at that level, what we've found is that all of the stuff, stuff that we consider physical, is basically 99.99999% empty space, or what we call the vacuum or the void. The thing that we're not realizing, and this is the reason why the standard model in physics has failed to account for consciousness, the presence of consciousness, is that so-called empty space that is in the space, not only, primarily between the nucleus of an atom and its electrons. That interstitial space is actually completely full, or nearly completely full, of energy and, on deeper analysis, information. And it actually has been shown through an experiment called the Casimir effect, which was hypothesized in the late 40s by a Dutch physicist named Casimir. And then in the early 90s, they actually were able to do an experiment which showed that what we call the physical vacuum actually does contain nearly infinite amount of vibrational modes, which vibration is just a stand-in for energy. And these little vibrational packets go down to a discrete small size at the smallest quantum, which is called the Planck's distance. It's a length which is billions and billions and billions of times smaller than the proton, which is the fundamental building block of all the atoms in the universe. In fact, the universe is made primarily of hydrogen atoms, and a hydrogen atom is one proton and one electron. And the electron by weight only weighs about 1,000th of what the proton weighs. So the proton is the basic constituent of all of matter. I think it's something like 87% of the entire universe is in the form of atomic hydrogen. At least that's what they postulate. And then most of the rest of it is atomic helium, which is 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and 2 electrons. So that's just to say that the fundamental building block that is the thing that actually connects everything is a physical energy that we call the Planck wavelength, or the Planck distance, and everything builds up from there. And when it's actually measured, what we find is that in a single cubic centimeter of space, which is not very much space, we have 10 to the 93rd grams worth of energy, and grams is a mass, and mass can be converted to an energy through Einstein's formula, famous formula, equals mc squared. So 10 to the 93 grams of mass is actually an inconceivable amount of energy. It's 39 orders of magnitude more than we observe in the entire universe. So it's a huge, huge number. And it's present everywhere, all the time, and is actually what connects everything. Now you might ask, well, why don't we interact with it? Why don't we sense? If there was that great a density of energy everywhere, like, how would we move? Well, the key to understanding that is that this energy or information is ordered in such an elegant and perfect structure that it is always in complete equilibrium with itself, which means that for every, we have to describe it in terms of vectors. So for every piece of it which has a momentum or a vector in this direction, there's an equal and opposite piece of it that goes exactly counter to it, which cancels it out. And there's only one geometry that actually satisfies this condition in 3D, in 3 spatial dimensions, and it fundamentally looks like this. It's probably going to be hard to see, but that is what is called the star tetrahedron, or the Merkaba, actually, in ancient texts, both in the ancient Egyptian and Hindu, Egyptian and Hebrew. One is the Merkaba and one is the Merkaba, but it's the same shape, and actually is a little bit more complicated because it includes a secondary shape, which I don't have in quite the same scale, but this is actually the same configuration, or the same number of tetrahedrons combined in a different way, which, when these two figures overlap, you generate something called a 64 tetrahedron grid, and that embodies the basic dynamics of the vacuum state. It's maybe a little too complicated to get into in this discussion, but suffice it to say that it's a completely balanced geometry that basically allows there to be infinite, or nearly, well, actually allows there to be an infinite amount of energy present everywhere all the time. And this is something that our current physics does not recognize or understand. So that's a very key sort of left brain piece of the puzzle if you want to understand how everything can exist in its full infinite potential everywhere all the time. So another way to think about it is that it is an unmanifest potential. It's a still point which contains all energy, all information, is present in all places, and basically is what most religions describe as God, basically. It is what we describe as God. It is the omnipotent, all omnipresent, omnipotent thing which out from which all physicality manifests. Now, why it manifests is actually the deeper question, and that actually has to do with the nature of consciousness. And the nature of consciousness is, I believe at its most fundamental, is the same as the nature of love. And the nature of love is to grow and to connect and to be more, always expanding, always wanting to become more and to expand into more and more levels of complexity and interconnectivity. And that's actually where a discussion of a fourth dimension of space is important, because basically if you want to understand where your consciousness is, you need to understand that it is not actually in your brain as we currently think, or where current science looks for consciousness is in the activity of the neural network inside the brain. But what we're finding out is that it isn't there. Memory isn't there. Consciousness isn't there. Can't describe the level of complexity. It's way too simple in order to describe what's occurring in our conscious awareness. So the idea there would be that consciousness is actually stored on a higher dimensional plane, a fourth physical dimension, which basically allows there to be instantaneous connectivity between all points in the three-dimensional matrix. And basically what your mind does is it is the tuner. It is like it's just like the radio. It's just like your stereo radio tuner. The tuner picks out the frequency, and then you hear the announcer or you hear the music. The announcer or the music is not inside the receiver. That is happening someplace else, and is just coming in on analogously on these electromagnetic waves. For consciousness, the analogy is that the announcer or the music that you're hearing, that is you, that is animating you, is being beamed in on the wavelength of subtle energy, or what we call the chi or the prana, what Reich called the orgone energy. And it's coming in from a higher dimensional state. It's coming in from what would seem to be an impossibly complex, completely interconnected, higher level of reality. And that one is hard to grasp because it does involve another direction of space. But I think the simple way to get your mind around it is to think of what they call the flat world or flat land, which would be a two-dimensional world that only included a plane, just one slice out of our three-dimensional world, a completely flat plane. Or actually you could also think of it as a curved plane, like as if the flat world could only exist on the surface of a sphere. Actually, that's probably the better analogy. I hadn't thought of that, but it might make it needlessly complex. But just think of one slice through the three-dimensional world, and think if that was the only place you could exist. If you wouldn't know which direction up or down was, because those directions wouldn't exist in your conscious awareness. Mm-hmm. So if I, as a three-dimensional being, decided to come into your two-dimensional world, it would look as if I had just appeared out of nowhere. Like, how did that happen? Mm-hmm. Because you could not sense the direction from which the entity came. So in this way, both energy and information can appear seemingly out of nowhere and be connected seemingly everywhere. It would be like if you're here in the three-dimensional world on the plane, and how could you be connected to something way over there? Well, if there was a third dimension of space that you could expand into, then there would be a pathway that would be instantaneous between those two places. It's as if the space would be able to fold, and like the flat world would just go boom, and it would just connect to itself, and then so the whole thing has this higher level of connectivity that we can't actually sense.
Is that the 100th monkey phenomenon? Is that something different?
That's something different.
Okay.
The 100th monkey phenomena just says that when consciousness reaches a certain threshold, when a conscious collective reaches a certain threshold of awareness among a certain percentage of its members, and that percentage is actually quite low. It's been actually shown experimentally that it's as low as the square root of 1% of the total population, which amazingly for 7 billion people on the planet is under 10,000 people. Have to basically attain a knowledge or awareness that is completely shared, and then once all those people are completely in that awareness, all the other people instantaneously will be aware of that. So that's a little bit of a sidetrack, but that is actually what we're getting very close to, I believe, and many people believe on the planet right now. We're getting very close to achieving a new level of awareness which will spread instantaneously to all people. And it is happening now.
Yeah, it feels like it.
And that's why I'm making this video, so it will happen a little sooner. So let's take a break?
Great.
And I'm just gonna check and see how that looks.